Hello, welcome to Revive and Rise. I'm your host, Melody Parrish, and we have a very special guest joining us today, John Graham. He's the founder and executive of Good Samaritan, which is an organization that helps those that are in or that are released from prison to resettle in the community. And also, he has written a book, Running as Fast as I Can. And it's a book about second chances. And I love that idea. So, John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Melody, I'm very glad to be here. It's a rainy morning. It reminds me a good deal of what it's like to live in the on the East Coast, where it rains every day, all day long. And we'll have a good conversation because of the weather.
That's right. I love the rain too. You know, when I was hiking in the woods this past weekend, and it started to pour rain, and I just love walking as long as the rain is warm. You know, I love walking in the
Yeah.
rain, and so it was nice.
That's interesting. You should say that because we live in a culture where we've eliminated all smells and natural events. We've made everything so artificial with air conditioning and homes that are completely comfortable at all times and all times of the year. But something about walking in the rain and feeling and hearing the rain hit the leaves, you just feel you want to take your shoes off and just get in touch with your natural grounding.
Right, right. And that's so important. Those things are so important for us to just have our senses heightened and focused on things, I think.
Particularly with so much noise, where it started with television. We're constantly having television on, even when we're not watching it. And now we have 6, 7, 8 hours of FaceTime on your phones, and it's almost as if friendships become artificial instead of personal. And I'm guilty of that because I do all my research and communication and work for Good Samaritan Home on the phone, and I could easily disappear. And I have to check myself and spend time with real people periodically.
Yes, yes, that's so important. So I wanted to talk for the month of July. We're talking about those little acts of kindness that have such powerful impacts on lives, and then those powerful impacts can have like a ripple effect and just affect everyone around you. Um, so I wanted to ask you, you know, with Good Samaritan, uh, if you've experienced anything like that, if you have a story of maybe someone in that you work with that has a story like that, or and then we can get into your book because I love that second chances.
Uh, Interesting you should ask that because I had a conversation just yesterday with our very first resident from 24 years ago. Uh, just for background, I was volunteering, working in the local prison, just going up to see how I could help people in some manner because we had opened Good Samaritan Home as a homeless shelter to help people in the community. But the local parole officers asked us to get involved with people coming out of prison. So I met a man who was being released from prison, and he was coming from Cleveland, and which is predominantly a Black community. And we're in Western Ohio in a rural town, and it's predominantly white. So he was quite nervous about coming. And what happened was we had a lot of blowback from the community because they felt like we were bringing in those people, as they called it, and which was a euphemism for Black people. You're bringing in murderers and rapists. And we still hear that jargon today in the news where anybody who's not like me is a murderer and a rapist, and therefore they need to be banned from our borders. So his name was Reggie, and he came to us and he literally stayed in our house and we were in the middle of remodeling it because it was 140 years old at the time, and we were trying to update it. And so he moved into that with two white strangers, and we were getting to know one another. And we were heating with wood at the time, so we had to split wood, and we had to put wood in the wood stove, and that was the only way we could heat. And what he told me yesterday was extremely interesting because he had had 4 prison terms. He'd been arrested for 4 different crimes. So, and he started when he was 18. So he had what we call a criminogenic pattern. But when he came to us, he was a give or take 35 years old, and he was wanting desperately to restart his life because he'd reached a point where he said, I'm too old to be acting like a kid again. And he had a daughter he wanted to reconnect with. But that's why he said, if I go back to Cleveland, I'll never change. So I need to go somewhere to start over, which is classic American story of immigration, going to a new land to restart your life. And so Reggie came, and he told me yesterday, very interesting thing, because he's made it. He's now been working for UPS for the past 8 years as a driver, and he lives about 20 miles away in a neighboring town. And he's married, and he has maintained or reconnected with his family. But he said what he appreciated most was that my wife, Kathy, would get up in the morning early, and they would sit by the fireplace and talk. And she never judged him. She never gave him advice. She never told him what to do with his life. He said, she just listened to me. And she never looked down on me. And he said, I owe it all to her because I felt that she really wanted me to make it. And then he started to get emotional on the phone call talking about that. And I thought, Reggie was a hard person to get to know initially, but Kathy bridged that gap by just listening to him. And then she helped him reconnect with his daughter, who was biracial. So she came to live with him when he moved from our house. And it was hard for her being biracial because she said, the white people act like I'm an outsider. The black people act like I'm an outsider, and I don't fit anywhere. And Kathy did the same thing. She just listened to Tanya. And I thought, I think it's probably an underrated characteristic that we all could learn from is just listening. And ironically, my wife has probably taught me that in many ways. And there are occasions when I'll go to one of our houses, because now we have 21 different houses for men coming from prison. And because we've grown into, on any given day, we have 100 people in our houses. But I might just sit on the porch and just ask a guy, tell me about your family. And the question that my wife loves to ask is, tell me about your mother. And invariably, what we hear is, she was my rock, or my grandmother was my rock. And so I think they identify Kathy as being almost a grandmother figure. And in the Black community in particular, that seems to be a very important part. And so she has much greater connection than many of my staff because of her ability to just listen. So that's what I think made it more than just a program. It's made us a mentoring house.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I think listening is so important. And that's what my book is about. It's my second book, and it's about how just a total stranger just took a moment and listened to me and how powerful that
Yeah.
was. And just them wanting to know about me and just taking that time. We go by and we're like, "Hey, how you doing?" But we never stop to for the answer. It's just a drive by or a walk by, and that's it. And just the fact that they stopped and listened, it was very powerful to me. And it just kind of changed the way that I saw myself and I thought about myself. And I think it's so powerful listening to stories.
Yeah. There's a book called Bridges Out of Poverty, and it was written by a school administrator in Houston. And she had many, many cultures in her school district, and also many were in poverty. And she said that she had to learn the language of poverty, and had the value system is different, and it's not a wrong value system; it's a survival value system. And she had to learn to that, for example, a bank account among the poor is not necessarily money in the bank, but it's friends who can loan you money because tomorrow you'll loan them money. And your friends are your savings account. And she said that was an interesting thing to learn because the first thing we say in middle class is open a bank, get a savings account, and you save 20% of every check. And the poor person will look at it and say, oh, I can't save 20%. I've got rent due, or I have to pay for my alimony, or I have to pay for my baby's mama, that sort of thing. And even the language like baby's mama is something she had to learn. So it's interesting to try to listen with their ears, is what I'm saying.
Right. Right. And that's so important too, because you don't want to listen and then judge or not hear what someone's trying to say. It's very important, I feel, the power of language. Could you speak more about that, working with people in poverty and working with people, coming from
Hmm.
prison and those kinds of things?
Well, the most important thing I try not to do is try to act like I understand the culture, to act like I can speak the hip language. I'm a white man, and I don't even pretend to be a black man, or I don't pretend to be a hip white man. I'm an old white man. And what I do is, I think it reminds me of a story of when Abraham Lincoln was going through his hardest time. He had a friend come in from Springfield, Illinois, and he just sat there. And while Abraham Lincoln just talked and talked, and then when his friend finally left and went back to Illinois, Mr. Lincoln said, "Thank you for your advice," and he didn't say anything. And I thought that he spoke the language that Mr. Lincoln needed, and that was simply to let him speak. And what I try to do with our residents is I don't try to communicate using their words necessarily, but I just try to show respect by, number one, sitting in a manner that seems very comfortable and relaxed, and just say, "Yeah, tell me what's going on." And the most beautiful sound of man's ears or a woman's ears is their name. Tell me how it's going, Robert. And There are times when we use formal names. We say Mr. Johnson, and it tends to create a barrier. So whenever possible, we try not to be your buddy, but just to be someone who treats you on an equal level. And maybe the best way to do it is we had a fellow who many times we say you need to clean your room because your responsibility in our house is to keep your room and your room clean and your bed made. But some people don't even know how to make a bed. So instead of saying do it, what we often try to do is say, let me help you do it. And in a way, you're saying, let me teach you without being condescending. And it puts you on a level of not just equality, but of support. And it shows probably the critical element in dealing with anybody coming out of prison, or really anybody, is showing respect. And that's an important element because it says that I respect who you are, not just what you say.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like there's just an underlying um, thing that we all have in common, and that's just that we want dignity. We want to be treated as a human. We don't want to be looked down on or thought to be less than. And I think we all want that. Would you say? Would you agree?
Not only agree with it, I would put a big exclamation point there because I've learned since I published my book, I've had to use social media to make it publicly known. So I've become very prolific in speaking TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and I've learned how to post things out there. And what I'm seeing as I get on the internet, I'm seeing a lot of name calling and a lot of anger and that so when I have a post and somebody's giving a certain political viewpoint, they're yelling and screaming on about uh, name calling their opponent. Their opponent is not an opponent; it's an enemy. And so what I try to do is the same thing I do with my residents. The louder they get, the calmer and the softer I get, rather than talk by calling them names and derogatory terms, even for our politicians, instead of using terms like he's an idiot or she's a slob. And we've done that. I've seen politicians use those terms on one another. I think by talking to somebody with respect and simply saying, "Could you elaborate on that?" Or give me an example so I can understand your position better. I think that would certainly help us communicate in our political world more than we are. And that set the tone for the rest of us. And I'm concerned that our children and grandchildren are growing up hearing that uh, hostility as being normal. And I sometimes I long for Jimmy Stewart doing Mr. Smith Goes to Washington again, where people are actually civil to one another in Congress. I can't change Washington, but I can change my posting on Facebook, and I can change my conversations here on a podcast to be. I like to say I offer a voice of second chance, a voice of hope, and it's resonated very well in the podcast communities where I've been, because I think we're all hungry for hope.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I
Yeah,
definitely.
God knows I've needed. We all need second chances. What it is.
Yes. Yeah. And the fact that we don't get it right the first time, maybe not the 10th time, but we still keep
Yeah.
trying, right?
Well, let me give you a real world example if I can. I graduated college back right after I was involved in, not peripherally involved in many of the anti-war protests in the 60s. And I graduated right after Kent State. And so the country was extremely divided, and many of us did not know where we were going and what we were going to do. So I went from job to job to job to career move to career move. And I had 8 different jobs over the next several years. And it took me until I was 53 years old to find where I actually fit. So I needed an extraordinary number of second chances. But I have found that that it's not just giving somebody a second chance, but it's giving them a chance to start over again. And that's very difficult. And so that's why when I look at somebody coming from prison, I think they're not that much different from me. Their choices may have become more extreme, but how many failed careers have I gone through? And yeah, the good news is that my children didn't make the same mistake I did. So they were able to learn beforehand. So, and I think right now we're living in a culture that can be very unforgiving because uh, on Facebook somebody will say, "You said this 12 years ago, and I'm still mad at you, or I'm still hurt because of it." Or here's a picture of you, when you were in third grade. And that's still, or worse yet, when somebody posts a picture of you that's in a compromising position that you regret ever having done, and that haunts you for the rest of your life. That to me is where forgiveness is most critically needed, a second chance.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I totally agree. And I think, we need to be more forgiving, and I think I heard something. I was listening to um, the book We Can Do Hard Things. It's by Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, and her
Mm.
sister, Amanda Doyle. And it comes from things about their podcasts that they had and just different things. And it really struck me. Glennon at one point says that she feels that that forgiveness is about trying to make sense of things. And sometimes
Mm.
things don't make sense. And that just really hit me um, when I heard that, because I feel like as human beings, that's our nature to try and make sense of everything. And this has to make sense. I know in my personal experiences, I try and make sense of things, and I just don't understand. And and I feel like, yeah, that makes it easier to understand when you put forgiveness in that context.
I was thinking about obviously birthright citizenship and immigration is a current issue in the news, and I started thinking about it that virtually every one of our founders were either a first or second generation immigrant, and some of them would never have made it through the screening process. Uh, and we were founded as a place where all of Europe and then eventually Asia and then Mexico would come to us because they wanted to start over their lives. But this is also at the root of our theology. I'm a Christian, and so Christianity is at root a second chance religion where you can start over. And not only that, but I can help you start over if you want to be part of this new group. So it's part of our not just our politics, but our faith to give an immigrant a second chance if he's willing to try. That's
Yes.
the key. So,
Yes.
and I think people instinctively know that. One of the reasons I traveled to Texas, I do my writing in San Antonio, and I've been going back and forth there for the past 14 years. And I'm a minority in San Antonio because the city is 65% Hispanic. And when I walk into McDonald's, they may be speaking Spanish or English, and they will adapt to whatever I speak. And I thought, I have I have 3 degrees, but I am a student of these people who may have very limited education, but they're smarter than me because they're bilingual, they're bicultural, and I feel like I'm a student. And that to me is the way that we Americans tend to think that we have more answers, and we should have, I think, more questions in the world. So,
Yes. Oh, I totally agree. And I feel like there's so many people that are making these narrow-minded decisions and ideas. I feel like they haven't, these are people that haven't even left this country that just think this is the best
yeah.
country in the world. It's not. There's so much beauty everywhere in every culture. And if you just get out there and experience it, you won't come back to this country feeling that way. And if you just see how intelligent these people are that don't go to college, that don't do these things, but they are so intelligent. I think like you were talking about the bilingual and the trilingual, and my my roommate in college knew and spoke 8 different languages because
Wow.
she was from Tanzania, and where there's all kinds of different languages, and she could communicate. She was able to communicate. And just the idea of you hearing a language and then having to convert it to another, I feel like people don't understand how, you know, how intense that can be. And so when they get around people that speak that have a different native language and first language, that they don't understand why these people are speaking this language when they're in this like, you're in America, why are you speaking that language? You need to speak English. That's so difficult to do, and I don't think they realize how difficult that is. And if they only understood that these people are just comfortable with each other, and so they're
Hmm.
wanting to speak. And if they were in another country and they were able to communicate, they would still go to people that spoke English and speak English. So it's so judgmental, and they don't feel like they would be in that same situation.
When I was in college, I took a summer job selling books, and I was ironically in Ohio then, going into the farm country door to door. And what I found was that there were many small communities that spoke entirely German. And what happened was that German immigrants in the 1850s came across to New York or Baltimore, and then they went west to Pittsburgh, caught a boat, and rode that boat to Cincinnati, and then went up the canal, the Miami Erie Canal, to west, central, and northern Ohio, and they formed entire communities that were all German. And even today, we call it the land of the parishes, the church spires, because you'll see all these either Lutheran churches because they're all German, or Catholic churches that are all German, and the entire town is centered around that parish church. And this was in 1970. They're still speaking German as their native tongue, and I thought. I found it fascinating because I felt like I was in a unique world, and I just wanted to absorb it because it was so different than where I'd come from.
Yes, yeah. I remember my best friend lives in Toronto, and I remember my first time going there, and I was sitting in their mall, um, eating at the food court, and there were 8 different languages going on,
Wow.
conversations going on across. You can tell when they're different, and I was like, wow, this is the most amazing thing ever. It's so profound to just experience new people, different people. I wouldn't want everybody to look like me or act like me or talk like me. The world would be so boring.
And it used to be that before television became so universal, that we took great pride in have our local dialects, but television, I think, has taken all the edges off our language, so we all have to talk. I guess you can call it talk normal, but it's not normal. It's simply talking flat. Yeah, even talking to you now, as we said in our initial conversation, I could hear a slight Tidewater accent, and I found that enthralling because it wanted to pull me in. And it reminded me a great deal of the airport in Charlotte with all the rocking chairs, just listening to you.
Yeah, that's what we do best in the South. We just sit in our rocking chairs and rock.
That's right. And you sit on the porch and you just pop squirrels out of the tree with your shotguns.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's so interesting. I love that you say too that Christianity is founded on second chances and
Oh, not
second
even a question.
opportunities. And I love that you say that because so many I'm a Christian too, but I don't like to call myself a Christian because of all of the negative impacts it has. So
Yeah.
I call myself a Jesus follower. and I believe in the Bible. I've read the Bible, and it never says anything about anything that we're doing right now in this country. It always says there's always a second chance. Love your neighbor, love people. It just always says that. Jesus himself said that. God says that. And I don't know where that got miscommunicated to, as in, this is, it's one country, it's one people. You have to do this. You have to believe this way. You have to look like me.
And the ironic thing is, I have found a fundamentalism streak, not just on the right, but on the left. I did my master's degree work in a Quaker school, which is generally very liberal, very, we use the term progressive now, but it was involved in all of the extreme left wing events and theologies. And they considered me, because I'm more moderate. They thought of me as being a fundamentalist, ironically, compared to them. But what I found was that they were as extreme as what they accused me of being, because fundamentalism has nothing to do with your doctrine. It has to do with your extremism or your closed mindedness. And I wrote a paper once that addressing one of their issues. I believe it's some feminist issue, and I had to understand their position, and so I wrote the first half of the paper explaining and detailing in a very positive manner their position, and then I said, however, let's look at the other side of it. And one of my fellow students said, "I thought you agreed with us until." and But it was the only paper to get an A because it approached the subject in an even-handed manner. And I think if we could do that today with the issue of immigration, or the issue of gender, or the issue of sexuality, if we could address these issues instead of pointing fingers, just to try to understand and explain my view or your view, so we could hear one another. Maybe that's what Reggie was saying. You listen to me.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that because I think that's mainly the problem. You know, I think I'm right, therefore I'm not going to listen to you. Instead,
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to tell you how right I am. I feel like that is a lot that goes on right now, and that's so sad because we're supposed to learn from each other, right?
Now, I'm going to say something that might be quite radical, but I've come to the conclusion that perhaps our leadership should probably be female, because females, historically, for millennia, learned how to cooperate with one another, because biologically, females are not as strong or as aggressive. Your bodies are not built for conflict. So they learn to cooperate and to work together. And in politics today, we tend to be combative from the males, whereas with the women, they are cooperative. So maybe we would have a peaceful world if you ladies would take charge. Don't quote me on that, because I'll get stoned.
Yes, I love that. And I've agreed with that for so long. And, we just need women to take over because I feel like, I mean, I'm not saying that we're the superior gender or anything, but, I feel like men are very territorial because we're animals and that's what animals are. They're territorial and we're going to bicker and fight, or men are going to bicker and fight. This is my place. No, this is my place. So I just feel like maybe we should give females a chance. Yeah, I agree.
It's hardwired into our being, as males are hunter gatherers, and we are territorial by design to protect, so we can pass on to the next generation our gene pool. So nature has dictated this order to survive, but you as a female are the birth giver, the nurturer, and you have to have a nest that is safe. So to do that, you've had to be imaginative, you had to be cooperative for survival. Now together men and women can make a good team, but too often we view the men as the enemy or the women as the enemy instead of as our partner.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, my wife works. I did all the work on building this house we're in now, but my wife has learned from that, and now she does much of the maintenance work in our houses. And on any given day, I will find her patching a wall or unclogging a drain or painting. And she's at an age where she should be sitting in that rocking chair, but she feels that it's her time to give back in this way, cooperative. She can contribute those things. And I have great respect for what she's doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love the fact you shared with me about your house and how it was so old, and you've sent me pictures of it before and after. And it's amazing the work. And I feel like that is symbolic of what we're talking about today, and just your experience and what Good Samaritan does. There's something that is old and a little, it needs work, and so you put in the work and then you get this thing that is beautiful. Would you agree with that?
Well, the what I said, I had a lot of career changes. I was at one point I was a minister, and I was fired because I wasn't political enough. So here I was at 53 years old, no job, and I had church housing that I'd lost. So we were looking desperately because we were near homeless. But the only house we could afford in town was a 145-year-old Victorian that had not been touched in 50 years, and it had devolved into being just a beauty shop. And so when we came into this house, and there were the one front room was a beauty shop, and then it had an apartment, and the upstairs was closed off, and the paint had not been touched in 50 years on the exterior. But what we saw was what it could be. And so we started with our sweat equity remodeling this house to what it looked like when it was built back in 1879. And now it's become what I feel to be a welcoming place. But more than that, it was a model for the community because, like as I said, there was resistance starting Good Samaritan Home because there was those outsiders coming in. But when they saw that a house could be improved, maybe the men we had living with us could be improved as well. And I like to joke about it, but it's true that when the house was done and the people in the neighborhood saw the positive impact, they started to wave towards us with all their fingers instead of just one finger. You get my drift.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
The house spoke for me, is what I'm saying. And
Right.
people could see a second chance in our house.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. And the fact that you're giving second chances to people. I love everything about you. I love that you're a minister, that you had to work in
Well, I'm defrocked. Let's be clear about that. I wasn't a very good minister.
well, it depends. It depends on who it is.
Yeah, it depends on how you define. You're right. I agree with that. I tried my best. I was going in a different direction.
Yes.
I like to say I'm more comfortable in prison than I am in a church board meeting. So that says it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. And I think It's important that you say that because I feel like a lot of people have been harmed by churches. And there's so many people that just don't even want to step foot in a church.
Yeah. Yeah, so I found that the church is not it's not a building. It's where you are. If you take your beliefs into the street, and if you act well, actually, the way to say, if you want to see how what God looks like, then they should see you in the street because you are the hands and feet of God, and that's not with your lips; it's with your actions. In fact, I've found that the less I say, the louder people hear me. And my best sermons are the ones where I don't say a damn thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes. I love that. I love that. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And do you have any tidbits, profound thoughts for our viewers or our listeners?
Well, I think sometimes people look for some great acts that they can do. What can I do to make a difference in my community? And I've learned over the years that a good example was I was going into a restaurant a couple days ago, and I saw this couple trying to get out their mother or somebody out of the car, and they looked like they're struggling. And I didn't know who they were, but I simply stopped and said, "Do you need help?" And they said, "No, we're fine, but thank you." I felt better and they felt better, I think, with that offer. But that simple little act of kindness is, I think, the first step towards maybe tomorrow, if somebody's in crisis, I'll be willing to help them. So if you're looking to do some difference in the community, it's in the small acts of kindness, wherever it comes across your path. Sometimes it's simply maybe you're mowing your yard and you just keep mowing into your neighbor's yard. Or if you see them on the porch, you go over and say, "Hi, how you doing?" And just waving is an act of kindness in our culture today where we're so anonymous.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Those simple things because I feel like people think they look at the state of our world and the disconnection and they're like, well, I can't do anything anyway. I'm just one person.
Yeah.
But if you add up these little things and just add them together, it's a really big thing.
George Bush, when he was president, said 1,000 points of light. He was encouraging you and I to be part of the greater light with our small light, and together we make a lighthouse.
Oh,
So,
oh, I like that.
yeah, that was George the First, George Bush the First. But he's actually probably one of our better presidents because he tried to live what he believed, and he even post president like Jimmy Carter, he actually lived his life in a manner that was befitting his position. I thought it wasn't political for him.
Yes, yes, I agree. I love Jimmy Carter and the way that he moved in life and in the world.
Yeah.
It was so amazing to watch.
Well, also you spoke his language coming from the South, so you could understand him better.
That's
It
right.
took me most of his 4 years to understand what he was saying because of the language.
Yes.
Well, I have very much enjoyed talking to you, and if I may, I would encourage people if you would like to read a real life literary example of second chances. I spent 10 years writing a novel that is fictional, but it's about what I call an everyman, just an average guy who struggles after poverty, after abuse, to find his place. And he finds it in giving back, in giving second chances that he is given a second chance. And it's called Running as Fast as I Can. And ironically, it was rejected 200 times by publishers. But since it's been published, the reader reviews have been so positive that it's encouraged me that people are definitely looking for a good news story. So I would encourage people to at least check it out and download a couple free chapters and enjoy the read.
Yes, yes. And you do you have a website or a way that our listeners can get a copy?
Easy, very easy. It's www, obviously, johndavidgraham.com. That's my author website. And that will link you not just to Amazon where it can be purchased or downloaded, but it also I write for Substack. My column, just opinions and issues that I like to talk about. But you're welcome to touch base with any of those and be in contact with me because I like to communicate with my readers.
Oh, fantastic. And I thank you for offering us those opportunities. That's amazing. I'm going to go out and get my copy of the book.
It let's put it this way: the readers have said that for them it wasn't just a book; it was an experience, and that's meant a great deal to me because uh, I planned to write this story for 50 years, and in my last 10 years, I actually sat down to do it, and the fact that it was rejected so many times before getting published, I think is in itself a story of second chances. And just because somebody says, I didn't like it, doesn't mean it's not a good thing. The next person will say, I loved it. And that's what happened.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you coming, and you're always welcome back. I'd love to have you back anytime you.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Melody. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, and for everybody listening out there, just remember that you do not have to suffer alone.